And welcome back to The Hunt. Today we are presenting you with episode 39. You're joined by Aidan Potts, your host, and today I am with Jared Cake Leonard.
Hello, sir.
How are you, mate?
Good, mate. How are you?
Very good. So it's only the two of us today. Benny Roberts is somewhere in Warners Bay frolicking along the Esplanade.
Yeah, he's having a hot boy walk, maybe.
Yeah, perhaps a hot boy walk, but mate, we can hold the fort. You know, we can withstand the audience because shout out to the audience. We have now 25-star reviews.
Really?
On Spotify.
That's sick.
Yeah. So I think we had like 5 reviews in one hit from our last episode, which was after you, mate. So a lot of your own listeners are tuning in to make sure that, you know, starting off on the right foot.
The cake effect.
The cake effect. But yeah, so thank you to our new listeners. Thank you for the ratings. And if you are new here, just continue hitting that, rate button with the 5 stars. It really does help out the channel.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
But today, mate, we were going to talk about bench press.
All things bench press.
From 2 blokes who cannot bench. But we can teach it, can't we?
That's right.
But we were discussing in PD this week. PD stands for personal development. We have a meeting every Monday morning at 8 a.m. sharp. And we sit there and we discuss, I guess, like strategies around how we can help improve each other's clients. And I think this is probably one of the best things that we can add to our clients' experience because it not only pulls, information from one coach, but 6 coaches,
There's 6 of us, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think the cool thing today is that we can sit down and we can probably just talk about like what we spoke about. And because we've had a couple of lifters who've plateaued a little bit. And as you do when you plateau, you need to be able to problem solve and take control, take responsibility of the situation and, try and investigate as to reasons as to why some people can't bench. And that took us along to the bench micro, which one Mr. Dan Lee is running. Although he's dropped a weight class, his bench has slowed down a little bit, but I'm always up for, being optimistic as to what things we could possibly do better. So we're going to use this case study as to like what we've come to the conclusion of how we can improve his bench, things we've changed, things that he's going to do better. And I think we're just going to have like an open discussion about it. And I think we'll go from there. So I think the biggest thing is when you have someone who plateaus in bench, you got to kind of look back as to like where things started slowing down.
Yeah. I think it's also, sorry to cut you off.
You're right.
I think it's also good to look at where things popped off and where things actually felt the best.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And do you believe that there's like this like expiry date of a bench, I guess, micro, and so to speak? So if you're running a bench micro cycle, say for like a couple blocks, and it goes really, really well, but then all of a sudden it just stops. Do you feel like every single cycle, not just bench, but maybe in deadlift and squatting, like, do you think that there's like an expiry on the thing that you're doing for the athlete?
I want to say to an extent, but like this kind of comes back to the quote unquote like golden microcycle that we talk about, right? Whether it be for squat, bench, or deadlift.
Yep.
I think in the case where it does quote unquote expire or stop, I think it's good to go back and look at pretty much like every variable that was occurring when it popped off. So like how hard were you pushing your accessories? How hard weren't you pushing your accessories?
Yep.
So on and so forth.
Yep.
And then if what you're doing at the time of expiry is different to when it was popping off, then maybe you need to just go back and try and match those same variables.
Yep. And to touch on like accessories, sometimes it may not even be like, are you pushing your accessories? Like that should always just be a given.
Exactly right.
And the thing is, it may come down to like how you're doing your accessories. So for example, like we love pushing our accessories here at Hunt Fluence, right?
Yeah.
And we program things like almost immediately to failure because like, unfortunately, if you're not getting within 5 reps of failure on any accessory,
You're not going to get jacked.
you're not going to get jacked.
Yeah.
And if you're not jacked, you're not going to press a lot of weight.
That's right.
So the thing is that like, if you're getting jacked in the wrong areas because you're just pushing absolute load with very poor technique in your accessories, then that's probably like one of the variables that I would look at.
I think that was more what I was actually trying to allude to.
Yeah.
And I think as well, just touching back, I think it's good to look at how hard say you bench 5 days a week, right? I think it's good to go back and look at how hard you're pushing all of your bench days, or how hard aren't you pushing all your bench days, and realizing that maybe you can't push all 5 days, or maybe you can only push 2 days, you know?
Sailing goes like what must go up must come down, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
the way that I see it, like in regards to answering my own question as to like, you know, does a microcycle, whether it's squat, bench, or deadlift, have its own expiry date? I believe it's true. However, there needs to be this, like, I guess, restart to the engine, so to speak, when you do reach that point of expiry. And generally speaking, when we talk about like certain bench days in a program, you've got your classic like primary bench day, secondary bench day, tertiary bench day, sometimes quaternary bench day, right?
Yep.
And each of those have a role and purpose. Primary usually is like much more intensity. It's a lot heavier.
Push it.
Yep, exactly. And then secondary is usually like more higher volume, right? And then tertiary is more depending on the athlete, if they respond to volume well in regards to a priming or a recovery mechanism. Like that's going to be probably the most different across the board for individualization, so to speak. And then quaternary is just, I don't even know. I don't even use quaternary as like a program thing, but I know a lot of pit listeners probably have heard that word before, but I'd probably classify it similar to tertiary. The thing is though, is that when you have these certain days that have these certain roles in a program, usually they're considered in a certain range of like applicability. Is that a word?
Yeah, that is a word.
Applicability? Yeah. You know, you can apply the secondary day in a number of ways. It could be 3x5. It could be 4x6. It could be 4x7. It could be like a top single long count with like 1x3 into 2x5 after that, something like that. Like there's a range of volume that must be accumulated from a secondary day. That's essentially all you're looking for. And for some people, that range can start really high, and then as you periodize through a block and things start to trim up and you start to like look for those like results on a primary day, then you're looking to essentially like potentiate the program by reducing the reps, increasing the intensity, but you're staying within that range. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think by nature, where you can periodize a bench microcycle or a mesocycle in this instance, then you're looking at, okay, we can periodize a program. I'm going to give a very specific example as to like what I do to figure out a bench micro.
Go on.
Like, I think I've spoke about this with you in your internship when you very first started. The easiest way to figure out how an athlete responds to volume and intensity is by following this very simple and basic program layout. Okay. It's called linear periodization. You may have heard of it. So on your day one, okay, we're running a 4-day split here. You do 4x5. Okay. Top set 5 with percentage back offs. The next day, you do an ascending 2 sets of 4. So a set of 4 at 5, a set of 4 at 6, and then 2x4 with -5 to 10% back off, but depending if you're lifting a lot of weight, not much weight, you're a male or a female, you're efficient, you're not efficient, those sort of things, you know what I mean? And then the next day, which is your tertiary day, okay, you'll be running like a 1x3 top set into a 2x3 or a 3x3 back off, which is going to be very light. So that's going to be like your quote unquote primary day. Priming day. And then the following day, day 4, is going to be the day where we're looking at trying to get the most out of our intensity. So you're going to be doing a top single to see exactly how it all ties together. And then you're going back to the pecking order by getting more volume in by doing like a 3x6 or a 4x6 afterwards. So the theme that I'm trying to get at here is that it's 5, 4, 3, 6. Okay. So when you do the 6s, the following week microcycle starts after you do that top single. And that's one thing a lot of people get wrong, is that they think that like, oh, it's the end of the week, I can just fucking push it as hard as I can. But I feel like that once the single is over, in most cases,
then the week starts.
The week starts again. You know what I mean? So you jump straight back into the next microcycle. But that in itself, that microcycle, I run with people who I've got no data about. I don't know what they respond to in regards to, what volume does to them. People who are doing 3 days a week bench and they've plateaued, I usually run them on this sort of similar sort of like range of bench micro. And what I find out from them very quickly is like, okay, so if your 4s turn up and they feel quite strong, as in that day 2 I was like just relating to, that means that like, okay, this athlete needs more volume the day before. Which is why you're doing the 5s and the 4s are turning up. On the contrary, if the single isn't feeling that great, it's probably because you're doing 4x3 or 3x3 the day before on that tertiary day. And then that leads to like the athlete coming in not feeling as strong.
Exactly,
So what would you do in the next block? Well, you would exacerbate and confirm your, I guess, results.
Yep.
You'd go day 1 6s. So you can see that the 5s are turning to 6. So you're still within that range of what a secondary day looks like. The next day, which is like your secondary primary day, 4s go into 3s to confirm that that result, but also like you're pulling away into those ranges of what a secondary day like traditionally looks like and what a primary day traditionally looks like.
Yep.
So you're going from 6s into 3s. It's like a 1x3 at 5, 1x3 at 6, then 2x3 or 3x3, depending on how the athlete's going or what their efficiency is like or what their tolerance is. And then the next day, you're probably going to look at doing like maybe a 4x5 as a tertiary or something like that.
Yeah.
Because you know that the day 2 with the 4s turned up better than the day 1. And then therefore that day 4 should feel better if you do a bit more volume or just do what you did on the day 1 on the day 3.
Yeah.
All right. Are you following my lead there?
I believe so.
Yeah, it's a bit complicated if you're listening to this, and obviously if you're not a coach or an athlete who has experience following like what a program is like in your mind, this may be hard to listen to. But what I'm trying to get at is that when it comes to finding a bench micro, there's a trail of clues that come into play, right? And you know if an athlete is responding really well to volume. You know if an athlete's really responding well to not much volume at all. Like they're the two main drivers of difference. And I feel like that is a really good tool if you're a coach listening out there, or if you're an athlete listening out there and you don't know how to program yourself for bench, or you don't know how to program your athletes to bench. That is a really good start to figure out exactly, okay, this is how volume manipulates performance, and this is how we're going to actually find a better outcome for them. So I hope that helps. Now we're going to talk more about bench technique.
Yes.
So one of the biggest things that I've found in the last maybe like probably 2 months is like there's 2 types of people in the world when they bench. They either bench on their neck or they bench on their upper back.
That's true.
Would you agree with that?
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
So when I think about the type of person that can bench on their neck, usually they express more thoracic extension. They can actually get their upper back away from the bench. They can actually lay on their neck and get more surface area.
Someone like myself. Or
someone like you,
Roberts.
mate. Yeah, exactly. Someone who can actually move their ribs. But someone who can't move their ribs posteriorly speaking, then that's going to be someone like me, someone, I don't know, like Jacob Henry, for example, who trains here.
Yep. Shout out Jacob Henry.
Someone like Mitch Brown. Very rare. You see a lot of girls benching on their upper back because they tend to be more flexible than a male. But that's 2 ways that I see us programming or training as coaches for the bench press is like confirming, okay, can you go on your neck or can you go on your upper back? And then that kind of like pushes you in this direction of knowing how to program the athlete.
Yeah, and that
both are successful ways, mind you.
Yeah, and that's obviously something that we look at when we first onboard someone and we like take them through their SBD assessment.
Yeah, if they can actually like move or not.
Yeah, pretty much.
And I think do you think the gold standard is to get on your neck, or do you think it's like?
I think it's whatever position your body can get into the most efficiently and the most comfortably.
Yeah,
and what you obviously feel the strongest in.
Yep.
Yeah.
So therefore, like, I don't think it's like, seen as a thing where it's like, okay, we need to get you on your neck because that's what drives the biggest arch. Like some people physically can't. Like I've tried for years to get on my neck and I just can't.
Yeah.
I bring the bar out and all of a sudden my ribs drop and I'm just like, I can't stay on my neck. So learning how to, I guess, like train yourself in that position is probably the first and foremost thing that you need to try and understand, and knowing how you lay on your back, knowing what position your shoulders therefore need to be in. The one tip I would give is like you definitely need to have more retraction when you're laying on your upper back than what you do on your neck.
Yeah.
Because simply like your upper back and your scaps are in contact with the bench. It's quite hard to move them. So you would tend to find people who lay on their upper back when they bench, they need to be more fixed in a position than freely moving in a position. Like someone yourself, this is quite good because we bench quite differently. Like by getting on your neck, like you're able to make your scaps move, right? Like maybe just talk about like how you feel when you set up, when you bench press and you can actually lay on your neck.
Yeah, mate. So what do you want? Like a step-by-step guide on
Not
how
really,
I set
just
up,
like the difference between someone laying on the upper back is where someone can't actually like move their scaps as well or as freely as someone like you because you have the room, because the bench is no longer in contact with your scaps. So therefore there's a lot more movement, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I just like drive the fuck out of my neck on the bench basically, and my scaps upper back feel quite loose.
Yep.
You know?
And is it something that like you have had to continuously like refine and train and get better at over time, or did you find that the position just came naturally to you?
I feel like it came naturally to me, but funnily enough, I found it came more naturally to me, and I was more conscious of it when the Eleiko V2 pads started becoming more common.
And this is the thing, right? Like
Yeah.
with the V2 pads, they give a lot of feedback
Yes.
because they're fucking stiff.
Yep.
And unfortunately, if you're a stiff bloke like me, you won't be able to get much feedback out of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think a bench pad does play more into account to those people who
Yeah.
do get on their neck more.
I agree with that.
And then I think for people like myself or whatever, like I don't know if many of our listeners have benched on a V3 before, or maybe like a Goliath, Samtech pad, V1, Eleiko pad, ER rack. We probably get
Pads
more
like
out of that.
that I really struggle on.
Yeah.
Because I can't get my neck like
Because
quote unquote sticky to the pad.
but there's more give. Like the
Yep.
the way we think about it here is like, okay, there's slack that you need to push with your neck out of the pad. And if you're not pushing the foam down as you're sliding in, and you're kind of just laying on it and looking for that like non-friction point, then you're not doing enough to actually, center your base of support on the actual bench pad itself with your neck.
Yep.
So that makes sense.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Do you think that you must be fully retracted when you're benching?
Not fully.
No. Yeah,
I think it helps, especially for beginners, like learning to get into position.
Yep.
But obviously over time, I believe that you can understand that you don't have to be like squeezing your scaps so hard, and you can let them move a bit more freely.
Yeah, and do you train like that with most of your accessories? So say for example, like if you're someone who doesn't have a fixed position with their scaps, are you training like that for them to move in your accessories and things like that? Like are there qualities in your accessories that carry over to this movement that you have in the bench where they're not fixed?
Yes.
Yep.
I believe so.
Yeah.
You got me thinking now.
That's all right. Well, this is what it's all about. Like, I think it's important to think about how you're executing your accessories, right? Like, for me personally, like different to you, I fix my scaps. I need to keep my scaps retracted and keep my scap behind my rib cage so I can actually like use my elbow to extend. Because if I'm pressing and my scap moves forward in protraction, I cannot extend my elbow in that position.
Yeah.
So a lot of my accessories are in fixed positions.
Gotcha.
So if I'm doing a machine chest press, I'm fixing my scaps back. I'm getting my ribs up as high as I can.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm holding that position in a fixed position.
I try to do that too.
Do you try to do that as well?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Yeah,
I try to, especially things like chest press and like even dumbbell press, I try to get in like as close to my actual comp bench position as I can.
Yep.
I feel like it just translates the best.
And what about rows and stuff? Are you looking at like actually getting your scap to move along the shoulder, like the
Yeah.
entire shoulder girdle? Yeah. Trying to move.
I'm trying to get as much reach as I can.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sweet. No, that's good. I think we can both agree there that like there are certain positions that you can fix yourself into, but if you're laying on your neck or if you're laying on your upper back, it's just going to come down to like what sort of like morphology you're made up of and how that plays into your individualization as a lifter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think that like depression is where it's all at though with benching? Like, do you think depression is like the one thing that every lifter should express when they are bench pressing?
Do you mind just expanding on that?
Yeah, sure. So like for a lot of lifters, like on Instagram and whatnot, like they express that like, oh, benching with shoulders back and down is like the only way that you should be able to bench. But unfortunately, with how broad of a spectrum lifters are these days, it's quite hard to like train people to actually get into depression. So you have to think of multiple ways to teach people how to bench in elevation.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's the only way that they can get their position in. And unfortunately, like with the shape and sizes of different people, the leverages and different types of, I guess, like bone lengths and joint ranges that they can access, I think it comes down to like, what's best suited for you.
Yeah, I don't think depression is like the golden.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at. So like, I don't think so either. I think certain people, like especially if you bench on your neck, you don't need as much depression as someone who actually benches on their upper back.
Yeah,
because by nature, your rib cage, right, when it tips back into rib cage expansion, and you're trying to get that big arch, and you're laying on that neck. The relative degree of depression through your back, because you have tipped your rib cage and you extend your thoracic, is going to be more depressed than not. So you don't have to double up on your scapular depression because it's already there.
Yeah.
But like for someone like myself who's laying a bit more closer to the bench in regards to my arch, I do have to like drive more of that scapular depression, and that's where like I do feel strong. So I think in saying that, like it does come down to, you know, like how much do you actually need? And sometimes it's hard to see that. But long story short, too long didn't read. The higher your arch, the less you're going to have to think about depressing your scaps because it's already there.
Yeah.
And then basically the lower your arch, the more you're going to have to leverage the scap to drop down because it doesn't have that relative position because the rib cage can't move for shit.
Yep. There you have it.
There you have it. No, very good.
Cool.
Now, how do you, Jared, go about like choosing variations for your athlete?
Well, firstly, what level lifter are they? You know, beginner, intermediate,
Well, not
advanced.
necessarily level of lifter. Like, what level is their bench at? That's what I think.
That's what I meant. Sorry,
Okay,
that's more what I meant. Sorry. So at the moment, we can touch into one of my lifters right now, who he is really struggling to gauge leg drive. Right. Been trying to explain it to him, cue it to him for the past couple blocks.
Yep.
This current block that we're in, I've actually prescribed him glutes up bench on one of his days. And I'm like, oh, like, make sure you send me these. I want to look at it.
Yep.
And I can see his legs are like, they're so on. And I'm like, how does that feel like in terms of your legs? And he's like, oh, this feels sick, man. I can push my legs so hard. I'm like, cool, do that, but with your bum down on your main. So we're going to keep running that for the rest of this block.
Such an underrated variation.
It is. I got that from you actually with George.
Yeah, George.
Yeah.
Still can't keep his leg dry.
Yeah.
No, I think.
But yeah, something like that. Like I think it's firstly identifying what's quote unquote missing from bench. So in this instance, leg drive, and then putting something in that will supplement it and also teach them. Yep. And then hopefully they can apply it.
Yeah, I agree. Like the way that I see variations is like, okay, how can I make the competition lift just better?
Yeah.
Like that's all it is.
Yeah.
I'm not throwing a variation in there just to
for the sake of it.
Yeah, like and I'm a bit far gone from adding variations as a constraint. So for example, like I wouldn't put Larson in a program purely to reduce intensity because it's harder. I would just flat out reduce intensity from the comp bench, right? If you don't need the technical adjustment. Yeah. So the goal at the end of the day is to do no variations. The goal is to just lift really good to A, the comp standard, but B, like maximizing your I guess position as best you can. Yeah. But like this is the thing, like you can be quite hyper specific with bench, and I think that's why like there's so much bench content out there that like there's so many different ways you can program the bench press.
Oh yeah.
And it does make it quite hard to, figure out like what the golden microcycle is because there's so many like possible.
It's different for everyone.
Yeah, like there's so many different combinations you can use. Like for squat and deadlift, it's really easy to program for them.
Yeah.
Like, usually one day is harder than the other. Like if you can do that, it's pretty easy to make progress.
Yeah.
But when you add 4 sessions in the mix, even 5, sometimes 6, like it becomes quite muddy. So that's why I think, it's important to have these discussions to figure out exactly what does work best.
Yeah. I think just coming back really quickly before we go away from variations, I think if you look at people like myself or Benny with like quite high arches and less range of motion, like things like mid grip or close grip, great as well.
I think that's where it comes back to is like, it makes just more sense that if you have a range of motion that's quite short on the bench, like you're going to get stronger by putting it through more.
Yeah, that's right.
Which brings us to our next topic, and one way that I've been programming the bench lately for those efficient people is by getting more range. Yeah. But the way that I think about it is, let's get our programming hats on here for a sec, listeners. Try and follow along. But say, for example, you run a 4-day split. Day 1 looks like something that you would just be practicing for, and I want you to think about it in 2 days separate of each other. So you got secondary, primary, okay? Yep. And that's within the 1 week. So the first half of the week where you have your Monday session, you would do something like a 4x5 or a top single with a 3x5 after. Gotcha. Competition bench, very specific, not very hard. Think of it like the secondary bench day example that I used at the start of the podcast. And then Tuesday you would have a rest. And then Wednesday you would have your primary day. Now, on that Monday session, before we moved forward just then, there wouldn't be any pressing accessories, nothing. Like you're not fatiguing yourself in the regards to
It's just bench.
It's just that competition bench practice technique, right? And then when we get to the Wednesday, that's the day where like you're going to be maximizing the majority of your pressing volume.
We're pushing hard. Yep.
So we use the practice that you had on the Monday, and we do a top double 2 count pause, maybe into a repeat load of the single, maybe a top single, maybe just a straight top double. And then once you've done that competition specific intensity work, you just jump straight into the meat and potatoes of what makes up bench pressing for a high arching bencher.
Yeah.
So that could be like close grip benching for 3x6, 4x7,
something like that.
Straight RPE. And then you're jumping into like a lot of your pressing accessories because you want the pressing to feel good on that day and feel strong and maximize what you're getting out of it.
Yeah.
And if you're bleeding in too many accessories in the days leading up, you just simply don't get enough out of it in regards to absolute, I guess, load on all your exercises. But the one thing that I think is the caveat between programming this just for people who have high arches is in regards to like, you know, not doing much and then extending the range on a primary day after you do the competition specific work is that people with low arches can also do it too.
Yes.
Because it's kind of like the same reasoning for 2 different types of people. Maybe do you want to touch on that a little bit? So basically like people who have high arches benefit from going through long ranges, but people who have long ranges also benefit from going through
longer ranges.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
So for example, Dan Lee, I said at the start of the podcast, someone who has, you know, quite a long range of motion.
Yeah.
At the moment, he's running like, I think last night he did close grip 8s, 4x8.
Yep.
And it was like a top set at RPE 6 and then 5% load drops for 3x8.
Yeah.
Basically what I'm looking for is for him to just get a deep amount of elbow flexion and shoulder extension.
Yeah.
Lengthen the pecs way more than it
Challenge
usually
the
does.
tissue.
Challenge the tissue and actually like get him like pushing harder through a longer range of motion. So and in evidence, like it should feel easy when you get to your primary day, right?
Yes. No, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're not going to be doing it 2 days prior because you're just going to be smoked from it.
Yeah.
Now to follow on from the example, day 1 and day 2 of that bench program is now done, and now you're moving on to say Friday.
Yep.
Thursday was a rest day. So on the Thursday, you're looking at basically again practicing the system and getting it ready for its next primary day.
Yep.
But the difference is that you don't have a rest day in between. So to remind ourselves, day 1 was on the Monday. Tuesday was a day off. Wednesday was a training day for the primary day. Thursday was a rest. Yes. Yep. Friday is now like your priming day because...
And then Saturday is primary.
Yes. Gotcha. So there's a difference here between like, okay, are we looking to be recovered for a primary day? Or are we looking to be primed for a primary day? So recovered meaning we have a day's rest in between the secondary volume and the primary day. Priming meaning we do the stimulus literally the day before.
Yeah.
And some athletes respond differently. Sam Bowles a big recovery boy. He loves having a rest day before his primary bench day.
Yeah.
So he will do a lot of his stuff 2 days before, and then he'll have a rest day, and then he has his best performances a day later.
Yeah.
And then people like young Maddie Harper, like a lot of my lightweight females.
Can I touch on my own bench
you
program
can if you want,
for a
mate.
second?
Yeah, go for it.
Like you just mentioned, people who like efficient, very much so need that priming day, right? I know myself, I definitely really need it. So with my coach, shout Stephen Day, our coach, I've always ran like that priming day on a Friday before my primary on the Saturday. And one block, this was like over a year ago now.
Yeah.
He's like, I just want to try taking out the priming day on the Friday, drop you down from 5 to 4 days, see how it feels. And my Saturday session, which was always showing up like, the best session of the week, it just felt so heavy.
Yeah, right.
Did not feel good at all.
Yeah.
And then I was telling him like, can we add it back? Can we add it back? And he's like, it's too soon just yet. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah.
Let it play out a bit more. And then it got to like the second last week of the block, and I told him again, and he's like, okay, let's add it back in for the last week. And I think I remember doing like +5, +7.5 on the primary day at easier RPEs. So I think it's like things like that, whether you need to trial putting it in or taking it out to see how it actually feels and how the athlete responds to it is really good.
Well, this is where this microcycle works so well because you get best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Right? Like you have the rest day between the secondary and the primary day.
Yep.
And then in your example that makes you feel strong where you benched the day before, you're also getting this at the back end of the week, right? So the Friday for you, you'd probably do like 5x1 from memory.
4x1, but yeah, pretty much.
And then, but like for my example, like you could do a 1x1 into 3x7 or something. But like it's just competition practice.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's easy.
Doesn't matter what load you're doing really. It's just the stimulus.
Exactly. You just need to get your central nervous system like, okay, I remember how to bench now.
Yep.
And then the following day you wake up, you have your brekkie, you come in, you train. And
you're good to go.
You're good to go. You hit the single and you monitor the performance of that Wednesday primary and that Saturday primary together, and you actually figure out, okay, like this is the comparison. Yeah. Right.
That's what I do every week.
Yeah. And then essentially like when you hit the Saturday session and you hit the single, you same thing as the Wednesday, you jump straight into your, I guess, like hypertrophy stimulus or like the stimulus that challenges the ranges for both low and high arching bench presses.
Yeah.
But you'd hit it differently. Like you'd get more of a lengthened position than the Wednesday pressing session, or you may get more of a shortened position. For example, changing your machine bench, like doing a close grip or a decline, or maybe you want to do like a flat dumbbell or an incline dumbbell. Feed up. No, I wouldn't do feed up. I'm personally not a fan of feed up anymore.
True.
Because of like lack thereof stability to actually hold like a specific position to the bench. Because if you're practicing more of a lengthened position, relative to shoulder extension and elbow flexion, like putting your feet up just limits that.
True. All right.
But like in saying that, like feet up makes sense for people who need more like shortening of their pecs. So for someone like yourself who can arch quite a fair bit, you would have more of a trained lengthened pec position than a shortened pec position. Yeah. So for people who have high arches, they're kind of going to get more out of feet up benching. They're going to get more out of machine flies, cable flies, dumbbell incline flies, like things that actually get the humerus adducting across towards the midline more is going to shorten more of those sternal pec fibers. Yeah. The thing is though, like there's more people who can't bench like that than there is, in my opinion. Like I think that there's less bench specialists than there actually are.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think the majority of people are going to fall into that, okay, we need to mimic the bench press position and just get you through a larger range of motion and get you stronger in that position from there. And you're getting so many benefits. You're getting neuromuscular efficiency around how the tissues are contracting in a deeper position. So like what your brain is telling your tissues to do in that position when it's challenged is really, really important, especially when you show a bit of intent behind it. So that's one of the big caveats you're getting from this sort of style of programming. But also like people who need more direct tricep work as well is going to benefit from it too. And putting a lot of your tricep training in different positions again on those days is important. I will say like a big tip for people who want to train triceps is that like if you're a big arching bench presser, you would generally find that your triceps are really stimulated all the time when your elbow is behind your body. So when you're in shoulder extension.
Yeah,
and I agree. That's going to be more of that long head tricep. It's going to be definitely like way more trained than the lateral head of the tricep or the third one no one talks about. But do you, Jared, for someone who has your arms quite far behind your body, do you find that you get more of a stimulus or more of a stimulation, out of like doing tricep push downs where your elbows are in front of your body, or anything where your elbows are in front of your body, like a tricep single arm push down or whatever it may be? Like, do you find that there's more stimulus in that?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely. Yeah. Like any tricep specific work, like I do single arm extensions. I get
dips probably wouldn't work that well for you either. Hey,
they do, but I find the tricep specific works better.
Yeah. So to make this sound a bit more cleaner, basically, if you have a big arch and your ribs are forward, your arms are going to be further behind your body. You're going to be a more relative shoulder extension. You're going to benefit from more shoulder flexed tricep work. So skull crushes.
Yes, skull crushes is sick,
single arm push downs with a cable, tricep push downs with a V bar, with a straight bar. JM pressing would be fucking pretty cool. Yeah, you know what I mean? But people sick, like me who live in shoulder fucking flexion and your elbow sits in front of your body in a normal posture and you struggle to actually get any shoulder extension, everything needs to be behind.
Yeah.
Cable kickbacks, katana, tricep extensions.
You love
single arm. I
katanas.
love katanas at the moment. Dips are like fantastic, but you need to make sure you're holding a retracted position and ribs are flared forward.
Yeah.
That they're pretty much like the two separations between like specifically programming tricep work for the individual. And
Yeah.
I think it's so important because
Yeah.
triceps are heavily overlooked.
Yeah, definitely.
Because they definitely extend the elbow and push weight upward.
Yeah. They fill out your shirts.
Feel like your shirts, feel like the sleeves, feel like the Malta sub junior world shirt because that is fucking tight at the moment. I don't know how you wear a medium, mate. You definitely look bigger than me. Okay, cool. So, like, I think we've touched on a fucking fair bit there.
We have.
Yeah.
What else is there to touch? Anything else?
I thought of something halfway through that, and it kind of like slipped past my mind. But the gist of it is like, there's always things to do.
Yeah.
And you always want to have 2 days of the week where you feel strong. One should feel stronger than the other, but you need 2 days of exposure at least to actually feel like you're getting something out of like your higher intensity bench pressing. Like that's the general trend I've found with pretty much everybody.
I agree.
I think as long as like you're heading in that direction where like you're treating your days with its sole purpose, whether it's to practice, whether it's to prime, whether it's to recover, whether it's to actually like pop the fuck off.
Yeah.
You need to have those days where like you understand the trends and the peaks and flows of like your actual bench.
And it can take time to understand that as well.
Yeah.
You know, but I think it's very important knowing the trends.
Yeah.
Obviously, whether you're the athlete or the coach.
Yeah, I just remembered my point.
Oh,
like you should know by week 3 if you're a trained advanced lifter if your bench micro is working or not.
Yep.
Like you have data that you can compare to, like rep set data, or single data, E1RM data that you've done in the past, and you know the trajectory of like what should work in a generalized fashion. So if you get to week 3 and you're like, fuck, I overshot that, or like, fuck, like this should be easy in what it is, or fuck, I'm like well behind the 8 ball of like what I'm usually meant to do.
Yep.
You should know by week 3 if bench should be turning up or not.
Yeah.
And to clarify why week 3, it's because our body runs on this thing called like a lag. Like everything you do in the coming week is a result of what you've done in the prior week. So say, for example, you run a 4-week block. Generally speaking, you've done half the block already. You should start to hit that quote unquote like strength curve, that power band.
Yeah.
And you should know where you're at by week 3 if the program's working or not. So if it's not, you need to fucking tell your coach, or you need to change your program. You just need to say like, look, like I know that I'm going nowhere next week. Let's just go back to the drawing board and figure it out again. And that's like so important. And as a coach, you should be able to take control of the situation, take responsibility, and be like, yeah, I hear you, I see it, I know. Let's like get things going. But to ask you, Jared, say for example, bench does come to a halt after week 3 and like it doesn't feel good. Do you keep squat and deadlift going, and do you just restart the bench micro? Like, what would you do in that instance as a coach?
This is actually really funny because this exact situation to the T happened to me in my last block.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I got to week 3, and up until this point, bench was just, in comparison to the previous block, right? Bench just felt like ass, you know? So I told Steve, and then by the time it got to the week 3 and I was still telling him, it feels no good, I'm in the bin. He was asking me questions like, when does it feel the best? How, what state are you in when bench feels the best, right? And then we came to the conclusion that my bench feels the best somewhere like post-comp, or where I've had like a quote-unquote bench deload, right? So we came to the agreement the following week, which was week 4, the last week of my block, to obviously keep running squat and deadlift how we normally do, but basically week 0, the bench.
Yep.
And now I'm in week 3 of the current block, which is the next block after that one, and bench feels great.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're right. So that's the other thing as well. Deloads, we could get into that one day. Heavily underrated.
I'm going to say so after my own experience. Yeah.
Like I think people were a bit scared of deloads, or they considered deload just the week 1 of a block, like which technically is true.
To an extent.
All means comes to an end. And this is like where you need to know where you're flying too close to the sun, and you need to actually like consider things that are going to make you feel better. In this case, that worked for you, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think just being reactive as a coach is the most important thing. Being reactive in your own training and identifying when things aren't working and knowing what changes to make and being able to read the data. And like if you're an athlete at this point where like you know how things are meant to feel or know what certain loads are meant to move like, you should be able to put your brain and your coach's brain together and come to an agreement or a conclusion or like work together to figure that thing out. Because
I agree.
Yeah, because like that is so powerful. Like if you got a coach that's kind of like blindly trying to figure things out and you're giving little to no input and you're just kind of just running the program, like you're just asking for like the thing to go wrong again.
Yeah.
Because and then not having humility about it and putting all this pressure on your coach is super intense.
Yes.
And that's where you fall out of love with it.
It's a two-way street.
Yep, and you get the shits with him or her, and fuck, it can get pear-shaped. So, yeah, just transparency, wanting to problem solve, like asking questions, like, why am I not fucking progressing?
Yeah.
Like, that's, like, the number one thing. Like, you should always be progressing. It doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah. I mean, that's what we all want to do, right?
Yeah, it's fucking why we do it. You know? Like, why, don't waste my fucking time.
Yeah.
Don't waste my money. Don't do anything. You
know? Yeah. Just touching back really quickly on my bench experience, like this past block. Obviously, we had the week 0 bench, but it was also realizing that I didn't need to be pushing as hard as I was all the time.
Yeah.
And identifying which days to push, which days not to push as hard, and which days not to push at all.
Yep. For
right?
Sure. Yep.
Yeah. I think, and this block so far, bench has been great.
That's good.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. That's enough bench talk. I think we're going for like, I'm going to say an hour, but it's definitely not an hour. It's been like half an hour, but it just feels like I've been talking a lot. So we'll be back with a quick break. We're going to come back to you with overrated, properly rated,
properly rated, underrated.
See you soon. Welcome back. So we just had a quick break. We discussed what we're going to do for properly rated, overrated, underrated, but we haven't told each other, so we're going to get genuine reactions here. So Jared wants to go first. He nominated himself, so Smarty Pants, what you got for me?
All right, so I've got having a quote-unquote top set song or like a song that you always play whenever you hit a lift.
Okay. Do I just say it or are we going to do it together?
We'll do it together.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
Overrated.
Yeah. I agree.
Cool.
Being an adaptable athlete is like the number one thing.
Yeah.
I think if you want to get better because you don't get to pick your song at comp.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And fuck, like, I don't know about you, but if I'm not training with headphones on, I just don't wear headphones at the meet unless they're like earphones or like I take them off like before I get ready because like I'm not going to wear them on the platform. So I don't wear them in training. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Unless like, I don't know, there's a shit ton of gas bagging going on in the gym and I need a
gas bagging. Right. Yep.
Lock the fuck in.
Yeah.
Or like, I don't know, there's maybe like a lot of head noise outside the gym and I need to really try and get a hand switching on, but I'm not listening to a specific song.
Yeah, I
it's
agree.
Probably a genre. Like, do you have a genre for like per lift if you did listen to something?
Yeah.
What's your genre?
For bench, anything that's not too stimulating. Yeah. But when I say for bench, I actually don't wear headphones at all when I bench.
Yeah.
I'll listen to literally whatever's on. If nothing's on, I'll listen to nothing. As long as it's not saying like too overstimulating.
Yeah.
You know? Deadlift, I probably will listen to something pretty stimulating.
Yep.
And
give us genres, mate, you know? Like
genres like hard style for deadlift or like really like heavy rap.
Yep.
Or something. And then squat is a bit more in between, like maybe some like chill rap kind of thing or like chill-ish music to an extent.
That's fine. Yeah, I think if Benny was here, he would say it's
he'd have a lot to say.
Yeah.
But I think it's a really good underrated skill to have, being able to just hit your lift fucking regardless of what's playing in the background.
Yeah.
Like I always, like when I squat and deadlift, I'll always wear my headphones like warming up, right?
Yeah.
That's what I do at comp. But then when I get to my top set, I'll just take it off and I won't like, you know, unless there's something stupid on, I won't change whatever's on. I'll just do it because you obviously can't control what's playing.
Internalizing your arousal was like
the
number one thing.
Yeah, and not having to rely on
so many
something
different
else
components
to arouse you. Yeah.
All right, my turn. So properly rated, underrated, overrated, double progression for programming. So for our listeners who don't understand what that is, basically think like 4 weeks. You got an accessory that you're trying to progress, right? You do like a set of 8 at 40 kilo dumbbells for dumbbell row. And then you go a set of 9 the following week, or sets of 9 with 40 kilo dumbbells, okay? And then you go a set of 10 in week 3, 40 kilo dumbbell row.
Yeah.
Like, so you can see that like the reps are increasing, but the RPE should relatively stay the same. So you're double progressing 2 things, rep ranges and RPE.
But you're still doing more.
But yeah, you're still doing relatively more, right?
Okay.
And then maybe in week 4, you go 3x6 at 42.5 kilo dumbbell rows. You know what I mean? So
I like that.
So progressing the rep ranges, progressing the relative RPE for the intensity of what you're using. So double progression.
Yeah.
3, 2, 1.
Properly
underrated.
rated.
Oh, really? I think it's used enough.
Okay.
Personally speaking, like knowing how I've been programmed for like 10 years, I think it was something that was used like very early on.
Yeah.
And it kind of just went away to like hitting all your accessories as hard as you can. And I think it's a good method for people who don't push their accessories hard enough.
That's what I was going to touch on. Yeah.
Yeah. So people who struggle to hit their RPEs or like don't push their accessories hard enough, like yeah, you can do the fixed load, but we're going to progress the reps like every single week.
Yeah.
And the RPE shouldn't get any better because it's quite a tangible scale when it comes to accessories, as in the RPE scale, like with the loads that you use, because like you can fucking do one more, even though your technique might be a bit shit.
Yeah, you can always do one more.
You can always do one more, but yeah, So like, why did you say properly rated then?
Well, yeah, I just think it's a good way to always push your accessories, you know?
Yeah.
Especially for people who don't push enough.
Yeah, and it's an underrated method because you don't see it like it's so easy as a coach to just go 3x10 at 7. And then the next week it's like 3x10 at 7, 7, 8. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So like, I think that isn't necessarily like, that's just singular progression because the RPE is just getting harder, but the rep range is staying the same. And honestly, like I said, like as long as you're within 5 reps of failure, like you're going to make any sort of progress. But it's a method that's used for those who like, and you probably see it more often in a gym than not as an online coach, where like, the athletes, are they actually hitting their RPEs on their accessories?
Yeah.
Cool.
All
right, well, that will do. So I hope you enjoyed the episode. Jared, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, mate.
And we'll catch you guys in episode 40.
Far out.
That's crazy.
That's sick, hey?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Take care.
See you guys. Thank you.